Hey everybody, Resident Loser Jeremy. And I want to talk a little bit, let's call it a pep talk. Alright? Had a long couple weeks of sessions, a lot of different bands, a lot of different people, a lot of different ranges of like types of bands and skill levels. One thing I want to touch on today is confidence. It can be a bummer when an artist is constantly beating up on themselves. I mean, put yourself in this position. So you're an artist or a band, whatever. You've either hired players or you've brought in your own band to the studio. So you've spent time with these songs, you've practiced everything. You're confident enough to go into the studio and spend some money and get this product finally finished. But one thing that really got to me was hearing one of the last artists just constantly ask, like, well, aren't we're the worst artist you've ever worked with? And that's hard to even address in the moment, because on one hand you're bashing every other artist you've worked with, and on the other hand, I mean, no, chances are the person working with you is not the worst artist you've ever worked with. But either way, there's no good answer to that. What the bigger issue is their mindset is so negative the whole time. And it's really hard. You're hired to be a producer, or you're hired to be an engineer. And there's really very little you can do creatively with someone who is constantly beating up on themselves, constantly second-guessing themselves. Because that quickly turns into second-guessing you as the producer, and second-guessing their bandmates or the players who are there in the room very, very quickly. None of which is conducive to an efficient session. So it's really them in their head. They're trying to make sure they use the time well, so they want to know how they stand. And I guess in their mind, let's talk about this maybe from kind of my horrible understanding of psychology, but they're in their mind, they want to know where they stand so that they can do better and use the rest of the time to the best of their ability and the most efficient to save themselves money in the long run. But what's really happening, they're kind of shutting themselves off to any creative input because they're demeaning themselves to such an extent. And it can take the form of a lot of different things. You have the artist who constantly jokes about how bad they are, and that can be literally just a joke. There's also the artist who is getting visibly upset. Like when you can see when somebody's getting upset and their cheeks are turning red and their eyes are kind of starting to squint a little bit, and you can see it happening, but there's really very little you can do. You can build them up, but you don't want to inflate them so much in the wrong direction, because those people are they can understand when they're being patronized. So it's riding a really thin line. And I think there's a confidence that you need to have, even when making a mistake. Mistakes are fine in the studio. That's why you come to a building like this. Sometimes mistakes are the coolest things that happen in a studio. There's some really interesting arrangement ideas or chordal changes that can happen literally from mistakes, where we've stopped an entire session and been like, hang on, what did you do right there? Because that was awesome. Like, oh, I messed up, I went to the 6 instead, I'm sorry. Like, no, that was awesome. When you have the mindset of, hey, this is okay, what happens here is fine, this is a studio, this is a creative space, then you're gonna come out on top. But if you have the whole time this feeling of everything I do sucks, I'm the worst, I don't belong here, I mean, that's called imposter syndrome, right? And a lot of us in kind of creative positions and otherwise, we all deal with this. We all deal with imposter syndrome, where you kind of have this voice that tells you you're not worthy of what you're doing, you're not good at it, you're a phony, you're a fraud, and everybody can see it. And when you let that voice take over, anything that happens in here is not genuine. I don't know that I'll go that far. I don't know that I should say anything that happens here is not genuine, but I don't know. I feel like if you've been in this situation, you kind of know where I'm coming from. But if you never have and you find yourself in a situation with an artist like this, that's a tough line. And I don't think there's one answer that works here. What I will say, in the few situations that I had just in the last 14 days of doing this with different people, and not the same method works for each one, but there's a lot of playing a psychological game, not to manipulate them, but to help them ultimately get them back into the headspace that allows them to be the best artist that they can be in the moment. And there's no one way to do that, I don't think. You just have to really lock in with that person. Take everything you know about your relationship with that individual, and if it's an artist who's just coming to record something, that might not be much. But you can deflect to other things, get them talking about your reference tracks, get them talking about the drum tones, get them talking about something. Get it off of them for a second, and then bring everything back. Well, hey, given what you've talked about with your references, I think maybe we could try this. Get it into their head that they're not gonna make a mistake. And even if they do, it's not the end of the world. What's important in the studio is being in, I don't even want to say like a positive mindset, but not a destructive mindset. A lot of good things can come from like tension, in which I wouldn't think, if there's tension in the room, not everyone is in a positive headspace. So tension can be a really good tool, but destructive, that's something completely different, and that's dangerous. And if you didn't care about your client and all you cared about was the paycheck, then it wouldn't bother you, because who cares? They're using the time anyway, let them do what they want to do. But if you really care about what your client is doing in the studio, and you care about how their money's spent because you want to get a good project because your name is also on this thing, don't forget, then you're gonna want to take a hard look at this situation and really figure this out. You're going to need to genuinely figure the situation out. I'm sorry this doesn't have an answer, but I think it's something we need to talk about, because there is a fair amount of kind of a psychological side to this that we deal with on a personal level, and that we have to deal with our clients. So no, sometimes it's not always music, and it's not always getting cool guitar tones and getting cool drum tones. Sometimes you genuinely have to pick somebody up off of the floor in a moment of pure self-destruction and build them back up into something that can then make art. It's not the worst place to start. There, some of the best art comes from exactly those places. But if you're not at least prepared for that situation, it can be really overwhelming. And if you're not careful, it can drag you down too. Don't let other emotional ups and downs throw you off. Someone in the room has to be even-keeled, and not to the point of berating that person who's struggling. Not that at all. You just have to be kind of that even level that person can then play off, and know where the baseline is so that they can eventually get back to that. Because ultimately your job is to make sure they get what they want out of the studio. And if you let it derail for too long, it's going to start to reflect bad on you. So not a good situation either way. I will say these situations that I encountered, they kind of all got taken care of. The project was finished. Everybody was generally happy. But yeah, I think it's something we don't talk about a ton, and I think we need to. Even for me, I'm going to start thinking about how I can approach this a little differently, even from the beginning, to kind of foster an environment that even doesn't allow it to get to that point. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. Don't get me wrong, we had great sessions. I had a few sessions where I really feel like I got some of the best tones and the best arrangements that I've ever gotten, which I think that's a good positive. But this is just an interesting side of it that we don't really talk about. And if I got on here and just bragged every time, I don't think that would be very genuine either. So yeah, I think if you want to go into this, or if you're in this and you've never experienced something like this, it's gonna happen. Get ready. I'm not even sure what to call this. Let's call it a pep talk. I don't know. Anyway, sorry to be a downer for your day, but I think it is something we need to think about and we need to address and we need to be prepared for when it happens. Food for thought. Anyway, guys, I'm Resident Loser Jeremy. I'll see you next time. Hey everybody, Resident Loser Jeremy here. I want to say thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you like what we're doing, go ahead and hit the like button. If you're really liking the videos, consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified every time we put out a video, go ahead and hit that bell. If you have ideas for any videos you want us to talk about, go ahead and mention those in the comments below. Or if you want, go ahead and check out our website, link in the description. We have some free guitar cab impulses, we have some free bass cab impulses, and we have some drum samples for sale. Anyway, this is your favorite loser Jeremy. I'll see you in the next one.